I wrote a little song to remind you Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? Alright. Bring a date, your teen, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With All Trails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with All Trails.
Come meet me at the Musial with Alan and Daniel. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good morning. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. With me, as always, Alan Medlock, A Medlock1 on the Twitters. Coming to you Friday morning after the Cardinals were rained out on Thursday against the Diamondbacks, and maybe that was a good thing, Alan. We saw some rough things, and it does feel a little bit like the Cardinals are taking on some water right about now.
I like how you put that. Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit before the show about that's a good phrase at this point, because I felt like they are who they are. We've been pretty fired up, but in this series, it seems like it's flipped a little bit to where Arizona kind of senses a little bit of blood in the water, and the Cardinals are playing a lot of defense, and Arizona's taking a lot of the advantage of the opportunities where the Cardinals aren't. You can't drive any runs in. And you can kind of see it being more of a veteran team that can kind of see that, hey, we're getting back into this. Let's play pretty well, go in and win a series. So, yeah, I was a little bit torn about yesterday. I had an event last night where I wouldn't have been able to watch anyway, but they were rained out. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I really wish they would have had a chance to at least split the series instead of look like you lose it. I mean, considering that you have to hold out until July 23rd to do it. But ultimately, with what they're going through on the bump, as far as the starting rotation and the bullpen, I think they needed a break overall. And I think some of the young hitters are starting to hit a wall a little bit.
Yeah, maybe some of that. It's really weird scheduling too, though, just as a passing thing. Usually a 4-game series, you're in that game in the afternoon, which I don't know what St. Louis weather was yesterday, but I probably could have gotten that in. For some reason, it was scheduled.
It's a good point. I did. Well, that's a great point, because I had forgotten that wasn't because I naturally went into it thinking it was a noon start. I kind of based my schedule this week around it being a noon start yesterday. So that's a great call.
Yeah, I know. It was weird to see that. In fact, it was the latest game on the MLB schedule yesterday, because they had a lot of afternoon games. Thursday night. Thursday's going to have a lot of afternoon games. There were some evening games, but all on the East Coast and such. So it was a bit surprising to see that it wasn't scheduled that way. I know that, Paul Seward from the Diamondbacks came out on Twitter and blasted the Cardinals for not moving it, but it also sounds like they didn't have a whole lot of choice in the matter. It sounded like MLB was the one that wasn't going to make that move. And but Arizona then goes and they have to go and play today too. So it's not, it's not like, there's an off day in there. So it was weird, and you're right. It turns into a lost series because Michael McGreevy struggled against the Royals, But I mean, if you're going to go send somebody out there to try to salvage a series and you can't send Dustin May, it's probably going to be McGreevy right now, right?
Well, yes, and that's that. This last time through the rotation, I felt it's been a little bit tough. I mean, I think they're trying to gain some confidence in Palante, but I don't know if that. I don't know if you nor I or what we've seen in the past few years if we're super confident about that. But that kind of leads to some of my concern that I've had from opening day through is how long can we sustain with this rotation and the idea of contention and all that. We knew they're like, hey, we probably have a bunch of 4s and 5s. Let's see how well they pitch and let's see how they go. But I just don't know. They don't have, like you say, that stopper that they need right now. And I knew that you and I kind of had a little bit of banter back and forth last week about Dustin May, but like after the 9 inning, just the showcase game, the one hit that he had, I had a feeling that he may have a clunker against Kansas City. I did not realize it would be a 2 inning, clunker. It was quite bad. A lot of hard contact in that Kansas City series, and it's kind of rolled into the next this home series too. A little bit concerning to me. I don't know where the bleeding is going to stop out of the rotation yet. They definitely need a good start, and you're right. I mean, McGreevy right now may be the most consistent of the ones to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have liked what we've seen out of Palante. It does feel a little bit like smoke and mirrors, but right now it's working. And McGreevy, this is a big start for McGreevy because I think if he's had a couple of blow up starts, but then he's been able to right the course. If he has 2 or 3 bad starts in a row, then you start wondering because of the underlying metrics, everything like that, if it's just his regression has started. So yeah, I mean, right now, and then then you've got the big elephant in the room, Matthew Liberatore, who was your opening day starter, and now, he went 5 1/3 this last game, but that's basically because they didn't want to burn more bullpen. He continues to run into issues that just snowball on him. If you look on Twitter, you'll see all the numbers that he's one of the worst pitchers over the last, year and a half. I know that the Cardinals have been very, very much talking about, process, not worried about results, all that kind of stuff. But even the comments that Ollie Marmol made this week, which was basically like, yeah, we know the problem, but until I know anything else, I'm going to keep running him out there. Kind of makes me feel like Ollie's a bit at the end of his rope as well, but this isn't his call.
Yeah, it sounds really similar to what move was made last year that had a lot of the same tidings. I can't remember. There was another move like this that you can kind of tell he was holding out and as long as he could.
Probably Fetty.
It was. That's exactly what it was. Yes. To where you're just like, well, I think that the dugout may be a little bit fed up with what they're seeing, but I think the front office is kind of balancing out what this is going to work, how this is going to work, whether they're going to be able to flip this piece, and they quickly found out that they could not. I don't think it's going that route with Liberatore, but I do think that there is you and I have joked about this for a long time. There may be a hip impingement or something coming up really quickly to where Libby may miss a start. You know what I'm saying? One of those type of situations, if they have somebody ready, because the contact is really, really hard right now. So much so that the last 3 starts you've heard, hey, is there a tipping pitches situation? Because the Kansas City game was one that was, or not Kansas City, but the last one was double. It was double central. It was really, really tough to watch. Yeah. And you're like, this is not good.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to argue about tipping pitches when he has had these kind of issues pretty much all year long. I mean, they may be a little bit exaggerated right now, a little bit harder than, but he's run into situations where everything's going fine and then they're not. Just looking, on the year, he's got a 5.56 ERA, a 1.58 WHIP. His baseball savant page has a ton of blue.
You pointed that out last week.
It's just and none of his expected numbers are any better. It's not like so this is not one of those situations of we've seen on the hitting side, right, of Lars Newbar or Matt Carpenter back in the day or whatever the case where the underlying metrics say everything is good, it's going to start working. There's no indication here that things are going to start working for Matthew Liberatore. Um, but I don't know what the solution is. You're right. I mean, he does have an option. Could you send him to Memphis and try to work on some things? Maybe. Um, you know, you just got to hope that Hunter Dobbins can take that spot, right? And we've seen some good things out of Hunter Dobbins, but there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to go more than 5 innings and give you, a decent return either.
Yeah. There's not a lot of answers right now, and that's a little concerning because you knew that there wasn't anybody that was quickly ready. And I think that Dobbins in the rotation right now. My want would be Dobbins to be the long extended guy in the. I loved that idea.
Mm-hmm.
The need may be him to take this rotation spot pretty quickly, but I just don't know if the uptick would be that substantial. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, it'd be somebody else to look at. But I think that's a tough thing. I mean, as fans, we kind of want the newness. Like we're tired of watching.
Yes.
Same thing. I mean, we've talked about it for Miles Michaelis forever, right? But and this is a different situation because there is still growth to be had in theory with Matthew Liberatore. I mean, this is a front office that has consistently said it's not about what's happening on the field. It's about, getting better. And if they think this process is going to help, is Matthew Liberatore is going to be good at the end of this process, or at least a contributor at the end of this process, they're probably willing to go through these growing pains. If they had 4 starters in Memphis that were ready to go, it might be a different story. But right now, I don't see that there's going to be any real significant changes.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a scary situation, especially I'm a Liberatore fan, and I kind of thought this is going to be a good move. Not good curveball, all kinds of stuff, but it just hadn't translated yet.
Yeah, and it does help. I mean, obviously, this team wants to develop players, young players, but Matthew Liberatore is what? He's going to be 26, 27 at the end of the year, maybe. He's getting a little bit out of the growth stage. He should be into kind of getting into the prime of his career stage. This is not a front office that brought him in, so there's not as much of a connection like it might have been under the Mo to make that Arizona Rosarena trade actually look like something. I just think it's a lack of options, right? I mean, there's just if Quinn Matthews he's pitched better as of late, but if he'd taken that step earlier, maybe we'd have a discussion on our hands. But right now, it's just they're going to have to figure out whether he is tipping, whether he's doing something that needs to be done, or if he just needs to figure out how to pitch with runners on. Or, you hate to say mental, right? I mean, I think that's the one thing we default to sometimes. He's just not mentally tough. He's just not able to, if something goes wrong, he just falls apart. And I don't want to say that about anybody, but it does. The results kind of indicate that sometimes, right? Because we saw it this week. He went 2 or 3 innings perfectly through, gives up a double, and then all of a sudden they just keep coming, right? And then all of a sudden they're down 5-0, and it just feels like that happens a lot. That he's going along well until something breaks, and then he can't shift his mindset. He can't shift his focus. I don't know what it is. And it may not be any of that, but he just may not pitch well out of the stretch. But whatever the case may be, it just seems like it just goes south fast.
Yeah, it's like I said, concerning. I mean, that's all you can kind of point to at this point, and the end game is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Also, I don't want to say concerning, but it a little bit feels like Jordan Walker's a bit on a slump. I like the fact that he had the 2 opposite field singles in Wednesday night's game, so maybe he's starting to come out of it. But, all this push for him to make the All-Star game, which is legit, obviously. But I don't know. I just felt like he's been in a bit of a slump as of late.
Well, I mean, he's still hitting, but there's
Yeah.
the power has been a struggle. I have noticed that. Yeah, I don't know. I still think it's highway robbery where it is. I think that I still think he makes it, but where the situation is was terrible. But like I said, it's a fan vote, and yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to push back on it. But yeah, it's one of those. His will be tougher to say just because Weatherholt, you understand, is probably going to be hitting a wall before too long. You know what I mean, and probably needs to break pretty significantly. Walker, you can't really say that. Been in the league for a little while, so I don't know. So hopefully this is just just a just a small just a small hole and not a cliff, and then you can find the power a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think we've seen him kind of go through, a little bit dips and ebbs and flows this year too.
Yeah,
Just at the beginning of the month, his average is 292, which is not too bad, but his slugging is 450, WRC plus 105. So he's not had a bad month by any means. But his walk rate's 2.2%. It feels like when he was on, he was drawing,
yeah,
he's being patient, taking some walks, and it feels like he's swinging at a few things. He's not as bad as he was, the last couple of years, but he's still getting beat on those, pitches in the other's batter's box at times. He's doing better about approaching it, but in this last little bit, in this last week to 10 days, it feels like he's had to, a little bit of a slump there. But I think we've seen that before, and he's been able to lock it back in, and I don't know why he wouldn't be able to do it now.
yeah. I'm optimistic about it. Or I guess it's cautiously optimistic that the second half won't be nearly as on fire as the first half. But I mean, I do think he's figured some things out, and he just looks more like a professional hitter when he's up there now instead of the lost in the chase and one of those things. Now the dog days of summer may completely prove us wrong, but on the optimistic side, I kind of feel like that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like the offense has been completely shut down with him not,
Yeah,
with whatever this issue is. I mean, I don't know what was in the water in Kansas City because I did not expect Kansas
man.
City to be that kind of hitter's ballpark. But both sides, I mean, the Cardinals gave up a lot of runs. They scored a lot of runs in that series too. Um, Arizona, the Arizona series back in Bush kind of got things back to normal, but it feels like right now it's not a explosive offense, but it's also an offense that is still productive and is still a lot deeper than it used to be.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, it never seems like that. Like the Kansas City blowout was one thing, but you just don't see that a whole lot. And they're competitive day in day out, which is nice to see. And that like I said, as we keep going and everything's positive right now, I'm trying to hold out as much hope as I can that they're going to stay in the race and hope they stay out of any doldrums when the heat really gets cranking and we start seeing some of the new players exposed to more games than they've played before.
Yeah, I mean we were talking a little bit before the show, with that rain out last night getting scheduled for the one off day later in July, the Cardinals go from the when they start the All-Star break, they don't get another day off until August 5th. I mean, there's a very strong chance that there are people that start that stretch that are not with the team at the end of it, right? I mean, that's the trade deadline's in the middle of that. Um, that is a long push, especially for a team that is already kind of maybe hitting a little bit of the wall, like you said. We'll see how they are going in. Excuse me, going into the break. But coming out of it, that's a hard road to go in the heat of the summer, not to have at least one day off.
Yeah. This especially now. I mean, you have all this rain in the Midwest that we've had. It's going to be humid and hot, humid, and you're going to be wearing the weather, more than anything. So it'll be a test.
Yeah, yeah. And we talked last week about the schedule leading up to the All-Star break. So that break's going to be huge for most of the players, the people that don't go to Philadelphia. Um, but yeah, they've got, and then they come out of the break, they go to Arizona, they go to play the Angels, home for that one game against the Diamondbacks. They're going to play Diamondbacks four times in that week, just three
Mm.
of them in Arizona, and then home against the Reds, home against the Cubs. Then they at least get to go to Toronto and New York, I think. So, yeah, I mean, granted, there's a really good chance even before that stretch, that we're going to know what this team is going to be doing at the All-Star break. And it really feels like the Cardinals are they're not focused on what is happening on the field this year. I mean, in their standings, they're looking at the process, and I don't know. I mean, there's an argument out there, and I think it's a strong one, that you don't give up on a team that's in contention because you don't know when that team's going to be in contention again. You may
Yes.
think it's going to be next year. You may think you got set up for a run, but we thought that about the Cardinals of 2015 too, and that didn't pan out, right? So I get that, but I also know that they're playing above their heads a little bit, and it's hard to make long-term commitments to something that's probably not going to be there next year.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's agree with all, and it is like we had talked about. I'm not so certain that they're going to deviate from the plan one way or the other. Now, I think it may have been more severe than it was, but I was talking to a good buddy of mine this week as we had our first kids camp, and he brought his kids over. He's married to a cousin of mine. He's the one that I reference on here quite a bit of being a big Giants fan. He's from the Oregon area. And we were kind of talking about, the direction that both of them were going to go. Now, as a Giants fan, and he can be kind of severe a little bit, he's ready to clean everything out, including Devers and one of those, because, even you better be hitting 40 bombs to act like that, one of those things. And then the conversation turned into the Cardinals. And I said, well, the guys that you kind of look at maybe moving, I go, May is probably a definite. I said Newt Bar is a probably and a high probably, honestly. And then you kind of look at some of the bullpen pieces that I think may have lost some value, but could potentially move. And that turned into, well, where are you in contention? That's going to matter. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I really don't think it will. I think that they're going to try to get a good return on any of those guys. I think Newt Bar would probably be the most surprising, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for it to happen. And I think that may have been the plan from day one, whether they were in one of the wild card spots or not.
Yeah, and I think Newt actually is probably the easiest one to move because then that frees up a spot for Joshua Baez, right? I mean,
sure.
And you might not. I mean, it's a rookie; he's coming up. You can't put that on there, but you might not lose much of a step there, right? I mean, if nothing else, you keep the fans engaged. When you bring up a big slugger like that, what matters on the field is different. May would be the same way if you're getting if you're bringing up Quinn Matthews. Not that there's not going to be a drop off, there would be a significant, but you would keep people. Okay, we're still. This isn't terrible. We'd obviously like to keep May, obviously, but it doesn't feel as much as let's strip this down as we're making room for new guys, and I think that's different. I think that's a different approach, because people have been clamoring to see these guys anyway. Then you trade those guys off, then you get into the bullpen, then that's a different story. And maybe in some of that you can get some sort of veteran bullpen arm to come back for the rest of the year or something like that helps you out. But I mean, there's a way to stick to the plan while still staying in contention a little bit.
Sure.
I think it's difficult when you trade Dustin May just because of how important he's been to the rotation. But I don't think this is a 2023 sell everything off and just hope you get a whole lot of prospects and worry about 2 or 3 years down the road. I think this is a sell the guys, get the prospects, but also promote the guys that look like they're ready.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I mean, and I think that honestly, that's kind of sticks with some of the vertical alignment principles that we were told and it has been reported and all those things to where, when somebody's ready, they're going to get a spot. And some of the long-term guys that we've grown to like and are good for the program and the culture may be on their way out, not in a negative way. It's just the nature of the beast at this point with what we're dealing with and what is still a rebuild, even though it may be elevated.
Yeah, I mean, you saw that. We saw that with we've seen it a couple times. We saw it especially with Blaze Jordan, who has held his own, I think, in the big leagues and has played better defense than I think anybody expected, especially with those comments going around even right before he got called up about how he was, he could stand over there and that's about it. He's put some
Yeah.
good plays together. Um, there was a stat that was on Twitter at some point in time. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically the point that he had as many fielding runs saved in a week or two that Nolan Arenado had all year so far. So obviously Nolan's not what he used to be, and some of that's just fluke and statistical noise. But it still tells you that Jordan's been an asset at third base, and that's again way beyond what we expected. And then at bat, Ollie trusts him in big situations, and so far he's come through a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean it's that. I've actually been a big fan of the move. I mean, that's some good quality at bats, productive at bats, and it has not. I mean, I don't think you've taken a step back from Gorman at all at third base.
Overall, no. I mean, Gorman was pretty strong defensively, so I don't
Sure.
know if you have. I don't like you said. I don't remember any plays that Jordan hasn't made off the top of my head. If you have, it's only been like a half step probably, and you've definitely made up for more than that with what he's done at the bat.
Yeah, sure, without a doubt. I mean, it's yeah. I think you're probably net at best right now.
Yeah. It is interesting. Not Jordan. Nolan Gorman hit a home run last night, I think, in Memphis or for Memphis. So I mean, he's still a long way off, though. I mean, it feels like, man, I don't know if we would see Gorman again until I don't know August at best. It feels like they're not just sitting him down there and he's going to have 4 good games and he's going to come back up. It feels like they're going to really work through this process, and I don't know that it's an easy fix.
Seems like it. I mean, I was slightly surprised to see that the road back started in Memphis. Honestly, I kind of thought it would be a little bit lower to slow the timeline down of how it was going to work. Be pretty direct, in the learning process and the reboot, and was somewhat surprised that it started in Memphis. So I still think it's going to be a lengthy one, but and somewhat hope it is, to be honest with you. And but was a little bit surprised that it started at the highest level.
Well, I think he went to the lab for a while
Yeah.
before he started playing. But I know I have heard in the past, they sometimes they want their players to be at that level just because the pitching is closer to major league pitching in the fact that it's got to have better control. It's got to have people around the zone. If you're looking for pitches to hit, you're going to be able to find them, that kind of stuff, versus playing at AA and not necessarily know what you're going to face. The level is a little bit more up and down. So I think there's something to that. Just being able to have consistent pitching, even if it's not major league pitching, it's at least somewhat close. And we know that he can hit major league pitching at some point in time, and he just can't do it consistently. So I mean, I'm a little bit surprised as well that it's there, but I also think, being a guy that's been around a long time, I don't know that him going to Springfield and just having a week where he just tees off on some
That's true.
year-old pitchers is going to help him much.
Sure. Well, and even the home run yesterday looked like a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right. It was just I guess the messaging looks like it's sooner rather than later if it starts in Memphis, really, and it kind of surprised me it did, because I think that this is going to take some time.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I understand that for sure, but I feel like, I just don't know that they're looking for him to work his way up. They're just they just want him to get the reps in game situations. For the stuff that they're working on in the lab or with other coaching is, and that's kind of what we saw with Jordan Walker, right? I mean, Walker went to Springfield for a while last year because he was coming back from injury, but it would be very surprising, I think, a little bit to see, somebody that wasn't doing a rehab start lower than that. And we'll see. I mean, like I said, first four at bats he had in his first game this week, he struck out. But then he got a single in his fifth at bat, and then, like I said, he had a home run last night, which may have been a mistake. But he wasn't hitting mistakes in the major league, so at least
Yeah, it's true.
It's
got to start somewhere.
Exactly, and again, I think it's a long process, and it should be because he's not going to. I mean, we've seen Nolan Gorman have runs of 2 weeks or so where he's just lights out, and we think, okay, it's all great, and then it just craters. I mean, he needs to have a hot stretch in Memphis and then have him cool down and see what that looks like versus, okay, he's fixed.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. I mean, where he goes on a heater for about 10 games, and you see him pretty quickly. That would be somewhat surprising, but something we'd seen before.
Yeah. I've been I don't know. It's been very interesting to watch how Ollie Marmol has used his players this year. I am going off on a bit of a tangent, so just
go right ahead.
Stay with me. But I've just seen how it feels like this year more than ever, and maybe it's because the bench is different. Maybe it's because the makeup of you got younger guys, whatever. But we've seen a lot of games where, like, I think it was Wednesday was an idea too, right? A lefty starts, and so Burleson's out of the lineup or anything like that. But as soon as the right-hander comes in, Ollie starts making the flip and bringing these guys back in. It's almost like a line change to some degree, right? I just feels like he's being more aggressive with that kind of stuff, or more dramatic, maybe, more of a, okay, here's our righties, and now we're going to bring in the lefties here, later on. And maybe that's just a function of having people that can play in a lot of different places. But I think it's been very interesting to see him, play those numbers, play the percentages like that.
Yeah, and then is the question kind of coming from I just for my clarity, is it coming from, hey, if you're going to do this, give a guy a day off too? You know what I mean? Or is it just surprised that hey, you're going to play the numbers regardless of what rest means? You know what I mean? I'm literally just asking.
No, I think it's probably more the latter. I'm not
okay.
I'm not criticizing it by any means.
No. I understand. It was okay. I just, for clarity on my part,
it feels like a Tony La Russa type of thing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm saying that, and I know that it's probably more of a thing that we see all around baseball now because the numbers are there. But to, really go for that advantage, even if it remains benching a guy like Burleson, who is good overall but has struggled against lefties all year long, to bench him and then bring him in the fourth or fifth inning, depending on whatever happens. I don't know that. I know Matheny and Schilt probably wouldn't have done that. I don't know that even I would have expected Ollie to do that before this year. Maybe he has, but it feels like this year, more than anything, it's been more stark of, okay, first, as soon as the starter's out, we're bringing these other bats in.
Yeah. The just the quick draw, and I did notice that. And the Burleson was the one that I noticed the other day quite a bit. It was like that was because one, it's surprising when he's not in the lineup, and but then you see it direct really quickly to where he was as soon as he could. So yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it has something to do with the lefties that what a team has in the bullpen and what's like all that kind of stuff. But it has been interesting. I mean, he's been very open to using Jose Fermin. I'm always gonna say Felix Fermin. Jose Fermin in a lot of different situations. We saw him play 2 or 3 different positions in the game against the Diamondbacks this last game, I think. In part because that allows Ollie to take his shots with he pinch hit for he pinch hit for Church or hit pinch hit for people that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to pinch hit for, because you're like, who's going to play defense in that spot? I mean, even in the 9th that game, he pinch hit for, if I remember right, he pinch ran for Crooks. That's what it was, or something. Basically, it was boiled down to, even if they had tied that game, Javon Herrera was going to have to play catcher and they'd lose their DH. But
Yeah.
he has pushed buttons and moved levers to get the advantage that he needs at the time, and figures that his roster can handle, whatever comes out of it.
Yeah. How would you grade the Marmol job this year?
I mean, I can't think of anything that's a downside right now. I mean, I hate
Yeah.
to say an A, but you've got a team that's overperforming. You've got, levers being pulled and aggressiveness being made. And, if you're going to ding him for anything, it's, maybe sticking with Gorman and Liberatore too long, but you also don't know how much of that's coming from the front office. So,
Sure.
yeah, I mean,
Have
B
you
plus.
felt like, I agree. Have you felt like it's also a situation, and I don't want this to go in a negative way with the past administration. I don't want it to go that direction. Do you feel like you've seen a more free, enjoyable, fun-loving guy this year than we've seen in the past?
I think maybe some.
Yeah.
I think that's a function of Ollie being allowed to take more of the public facing stuff, because
Yeah.
Mo has been there forever. And so people are going to ask Mo, which is now he's got more seniority than Heim does, right? If you're just looking at how long he's been in the organization. I think it's also a function of the fact that he's in his fifth season now. One of the longest tenured ones in the league right now, especially in the National League. And I think he's just a little bit more comfortable where he's at right now. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think we're seeing more of him. We're seeing more of Ollie's personality. We're seeing more of different things. Why that's the case, I think there's a lot of different possibilities, but I do think we're seeing a little bit more. And I think probably the biggest thing is he's just much more comfortable, not only in his job because he's been there, but with this roster because he came up as a development type of guy, and he doesn't have to worry. And I'm not laying blame on veterans or anything like that, but he didn't have to worry about managing their expectations, doing what Nolan needs or Wilson Contreras needs or even Sonny Gray or anything like that, right? He has a little bit more freedom to, play for Mean at third base, and then bring in Jordan or something like that. Whereas if you've got Nolan Arenado, he's going to play all the time, right? So
Yeah.
I think he's probably having a little bit more fun just because he's got a little bit more freedom that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like we've seen a side to him that we haven't in the past, but I did not think about your angle on that, to where Mo was the face for so long and wanted to be, to where now it kind of opens it up for Marmol a little bit. I mean, I had also kind of linked it to just being the younger administration and the kind of the more hip administration, which you could clearly tell when we were there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and they have made a point, when I talked to Carson Shipley, the communications guy that sets up Blogger Day and all that kind of stuff, they really seem to be making a point of having that kind of direct outreach again, and or not even again, just more of it. And that's one of the reasons we got a chance to talk to Ollie in spring training, and they hope to do that again. They've made a few other people available, I think, at times, or at least are open to that. I think that there's some of that as well, right? They're trying to they're not taking the curtain down, but they're maybe moving aside a little bit and letting a little bit more access to that, and that helps. I mean, I don't remember. I know Ollie's doing the show on KMOX every Tuesday, and I think he may have done it last year. But just stuff like that helps see who he is and why he's doing things as well. And I think that can only help, right? I mean, it's especially in a season where you thought you were really going to need fan buy-in. Being able to give that kind of access and that kind of idea of this is why we're doing things is huge.
Yeah. It's been fun to watch. It's been energizing. I think that it helps with the alignment of having the younger club that's playing so well. And I feel like that plays a part. I mean, when it's the more free approach of go out, be yourselves, and we'll do the heavy lifting from here. And I think that's made a difference.
Well, and we always know winning helps a ton, right? I mean, a
Sure.
clubhouse is a lot freer, a lot more open, a lot more fun when you're winning, and especially when you're winning when you weren't necessarily expecting to. I mean, they always
Yeah.
say they were, but they're kind of the talk. Now, it does feel, I mean, it's hard not to see regression coming, right? We
Yeah.
after that Kansas City, after losing two of the last two series, with Miami coming up, a team that is on the rise, that's only a game and a half behind the Cardinals in the wild card standings. And then the hard part of the schedule with the Braves, the Cubs, the 5-game set against the Brewers. It really feels like maybe the bubble is bursting. Maybe we're starting to see the Cardinals settle back to a little bit closer to what we thought. But even if that's the case, this has been a successful season.
Sure. Completely agreed. I mean, that's y- y- you love the messaging of the players competing, but none of us went in with high expectations that they were going to stick around there. There was hope, and there was a lot of one of those that if this works, and if this works, and if this works, but hey, more than one if, that's a lot of ifs. Well, I mean, those things have happened, and you've seen enough growth now to where you're pretty confident of moving forward and sticking in this a little bit longer. But yeah, you understand that the way that the roster was constructed with the long term goals of figuring out who they are, yeah, there's going to be a wall that they hit eventually, and you could see that in the rotation. You could see the outline numbers, and the bottom line, the stat that hardly ever lies is the run differential, and they can hardly stay net positive on that, and that usually tells a big story.
Usually does. And I mean, yeah, they're -1 right now. Who knows? Maybe they can, they'll hit a spot, they'll bounce back. Again, I've pointed it out a number of times this year. They still haven't hit under 500 at all this year. Hopefully they can win some games here. And who knows? I mean, every day's a new day, right? I mean, and we'll see how they react to some of these situations. We'll see how the front office supports them. We'll see if there's moves to be made. Again, and kind of going back to Matthew Liberatore, again, I know that the front office is kind of this idea that they're not going to give up. And we saw this, saw articles on him. We saw articles on Kyle Leahy. And Leahy, the last couple of outings, has really kind of
Sure.
started to, earn that trust, if you will. Now, maybe that's, we'll see if it continues, because I've still not been super big on this Leahy as a starter thing, but it's definitely worked better than I thought it would be. And especially if we're starting to see him go 6 innings on a regular, or at least close to it. But I just don't know how much longer they can stick with Liberatore in this way, because at some point in time, even if you're trying to trust the process, it becomes defeating for the player, right? To go out there
Yes.
and have these kind of outings.
Yeah, agreed. I thought about that too. Then it turns into one of those things that always that's one of the things that always sticks out to me is I remember when Frank Robinson was still around and was managing. In particular, he was managing the Nationals at the time, and I remember they put a struggling catcher out there who was struggling defensively, and I mean really struggling. Put him back out there, and it took him about an inning, and he came and got him quick, and they kind of got called to the carpet by even putting it out there. And Robinson made the comment. He said, "I'm never going to embarrass a guy." He goes, "I'm not going to let him keep embarrassing himself like that." One of those things. He goes, "This is for the value of the player and for the future of the guy who will actually went on to have a good career." I always think about those in the situations like this. The Fetty one last year really stood out to me as well. That you're just like, well, and even Michaelis a little bit. Michaelis took it as much as we did or liked him or disliked him. He was usually pretty good media wise and would say the right things, and still does that. Where Fetty was just didn't talk much, and he was easy to take shots at in those situations. In this situation, you're just like, well, when does it become the overall negativity and more into the embarrassment factor of keep running them out if the balls are just going to get hit hard. I mean, you're going to have to figure out you're going to have to identify the problem and find a solution pretty quickly on those, or it does turn into a situation to where it's going to hurt the player long-term value anyway.
And I think, I mean, granted, third time through has been really rough for Liberatore.
Yeah.
A lot of, well, even second time through and all that has been too, but he throws enough outings or partial parts of an outing that look good, that make you think that if we can find that problem, if we can find the flaw, if we can make this adjustment, not that he's going to be a number one, but he's going to be a solid mid-rotation guy, right? I mean, he's never going to strike out a whole lot, but he's salvageable, I guess is maybe the word.
Yeah.
If you can find it. The problem is, this is a smart. I don't have any problem with the coaching staff. I mean, this is a smart coaching staff. And if they're still not finding it, you start to then at some point in time wonder, is it there to be found? And again, maybe they know what some of the issues are and they're really working on it, and it's just a long-term process.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be. But yeah, you're right. I mean, at some point in time, if you don't want a guy going out to the mound, looking up and seeing his picture with a 6 ERA underneath it, right? I mean, that's not a great mindset to start a game. So I would hope that either things get better quickly or they use at least the All-Star game to maybe make some changes in the rotation. Even if that's just going to a 6-man rotation and bringing Matthews up to let him, the problem with 6-man is, of course, you cut into your bullpen, and that's a danger with these arms, but, maybe it spaces things out, and at least a little extra rest it won't hurt, I wouldn't think.
Agreed. Yeah, and I always do. After the last two kind of clunkers, I did kind of wonder if that would be the next move, the extended rest angle.
Maybe. Again, the Cardinals don't have that huge depth, Stobbins.
Yeah.
Maybe Matthews. And Matthews is not a guarantee right now. I mean, he has pitched better as of late, but he has not been the Quinn Matthews we thought 2 years ago was coming up. So could he be ready for the major leagues down? Maybe, but I don't think it's a guarantee. So yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot else, especially if you trade, Dustin May off at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Cardinals had a press conference this week. They had changes on the business side of things. Bill DeWitt Jr. steps away from being CEO and is just now primary owner. Bill DeWitt III moves up to CEO. Anouk Karakni? I don't know. I hope it's something like that.
It's a tough one.
It is, and they keep always put his name. When they say his name, I'm never sure where the first name ends and the second name. It is last name. It's like because it ends in a K, it starts with a K. But anyway, something like that. Who has been a rising person ever since I remember when he was over with the Blue Jays, and then it got a big deal when they signed him on the business side of things, and now he's in charge of all the business, just like Bill DeWitt III was. Do you think this changes anything about how the Cardinals are run?
I mean, no, and I don't mean that in such a negative way either. To come off like that, I got a kick out of your response when I brought this up earlier, because I was thinking that would be a more substantial topic that we would talk about, and that you would have more insight, or not necessarily insight, of a stronger feeling than I did, because I whenever the presser broke and the way that they announced everybody, you could kind of see what was going on anyway, that they weren't necessarily selling, but there was going to be a restructure, and we were going to get some, just open door policy of what was going on the business side of things. I doubt things look different. I do like the idea of just the possibility of, we've talked about this for years, about how things may have gotten a little bit stale in the front office, and where Mo probably took a lot of heat for moves that he was told he can't make, type deal, and money saving situations. The fact that there's change, period, is a little bit exciting to me because there seems like there's the possibility of things changing, if that makes sense. Not necessarily changing, improving. Just maybe from a new, the new younger son's outlook. Now, there's also the idea that a lot of these dynasties are successful in the second son and a disaster in the third son. So that's a little bit concerning. But I ultimately don't think things will look much different. I think St. Louis baseball is St. Louis baseball, and where there may be some tweaks and some hills and valleys, I think it's probably going to be a mainstay for a long time. And there will be times we're going to be excited, and there's times we're going to be disappointed, and we really won't know where to place the blame. But now at least we know that it's not the second.
Yeah, I mean, it really sounded like, they even said this in either in the conference or afterwards in some of the other interviews, that this was less a promotion than a defining roles.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this stuff had been going on for quite some time. I have talked with Carson about having Bill DeWitt III on for the last couple of years because I've always found it interesting. He's working with his dad, who is now 84. I'm working with my dad, who is going to be 85 at the end of next month. In the family business, as it were. I don't plan to take over the family business, so that's a different story. But still, I wonder how much of that is. I'm working. You're working with your dad, but I'd like to do this, or that. I mean, I have no idea what the DeWitt's open, relationship is to each other. Can he come in and say, "Hey, we need to do this or that"? But no matter what, final call is on Bill DeWitt Jr., right? And so now Bill DeWitt III gets to make the final calls on some things. I don't think there's significant changes because I do think they're in line with stuff. I think they're pretty much, and I figure that any kind of idea he's had has at least had a fair hearing. But I do think it'll be kind of interesting to see how that works. I know there's a lot of people that don't necessarily have a high opinion of Bill DeWitt III. He has made a few public gaffes, as it were. There are people that seem to think that he is more focused on the business than the baseball. You've been around long enough that you were at some of the blogger days where he showed up and answered questions. Did you ever have that feeling about him?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was kind of a point that I was getting ready to make. On a personal note, he always impressed me when he was there because before Bloom, when Mo would leave, if you remember, he would hang out and he would answer a lot of questions. He would go out on the balcony with everybody and would be very, very approachable. I also know someone who's from St. Louis who actually coaches with me now. He's a St. Louis. He played professional. He came here to play at TU, play professional soccer in Tulsa and St. Louis. Is still a pretty big part of the community there because his kids go there. And long story short, but they play pickup games with him, and I think that I've heard that he's a great guy. And I wonder how much of the complaints of him being involved now are recency bias just because of the comments about the ticket sales a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And everybody's due a blunder. But I will tell you this, from what I've seen on the front end, I've always thought was really, really cool and he was approachable. What I've heard from a trusted friend of mine who said, hey, he comes out and plays pickup soccer with us and he never misses any of these games, means he's not afraid to get out in the community a little bit. All of those things point to me like a fresh set of eyes isn't going to hurt. Now, 25, 30 years ago, maybe the second was the same guy. I don't know. And then, moving up to the top spot, you have too much to do. And, it also often looks like you can't come down and hobnob with people. So I don't know what time matters in job roles may make a difference on that. But I was always impressed when he was in the same room with us. I'll say that.
I think it's also generational to some degree, right? Our father's generation, that older generation, was a little bit more reserved, a little bit more off than our generation is, or even the generation that has come up after us is a little bit more involved with family life, involved with, work-life balance, that kind of stuff. And so I'm not, we're painting with a broad brush there, but that may be as well part of it that, Bill DeWitt just came up with grew up in a different age and stuff like that. I agree. I always thought Bill DeWitt had a significant passion for the history of the club. He has been involved. I think he was involved with the cream jerseys at least, maybe the blues as well, which I'll have to just, not hold that against him. But he has definitely had a wanting of recognizing, past logos and everything like that. So I feel like
Your leg is up.
he's got a good feel for the game, and he enjoys the game. I also think, and I wrote about this, I think at the time, we talked about it probably at the time. Yeah, I feel like his little comment or his little, laugh at the wrong time was really kind of taken out of context, because he really,
Yeah.
to me, listening to his conversation was like, we don't need people not showing up at the game to let us know that there's a problem, because we already know that there's a problem. That was really the idea that I got out of that. It wasn't like, oh, now you're going to bring it to our attention. No, we already know this. And we're trying to do something about it. I don't think it came off right. I don't think it worked well. And, I know Bernie has said that Bill DeWitt III kind of needs a little bit of media coaching, as it were. But again, I don't think there's anything to indicate that he doesn't love the game. I don't think there's anything to indicate that, he's looking to, turn this over to somebody else. I mean, this is all he's ever done for the most part. And, they just said in the press conference, his son, Bill DeWitt Jr.'s grandson, is working for the Cardinals, which is a good family business to have. There's no doubt about it. I think this is going to continue on, and at some point in time, we'll see some changes, and I hope that he's not necessarily a hardliner on budgets and stuff like that. I mean, coming up from the business side of things, I could see that maybe being an issue. But I also think that he said all the right things about, what Heim needs, and I think that I don't think Heim Bloom gets this far and gets this much support and gets this much development money for the minors and all that kind of stuff if Bill DeWitt III isn't on board as well.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's that's a great point. And he probably has had a more prevalent role than we've known here in the past couple of years. And you're right that this may just be a redefining of title than anything. So yeah, I'm optimistic just because of sometimes I get really, I can really fall into, hey, change is change. Let's just do this just to see what's different. But in this situation, I'm like, there's going to have to be a succession type with the DeWitts, period. Just due to how life goes. I mean, in the mid 80s, one of those type of situations. And unfortunately, the family's under the spotlight for having an organization with such tradition. And to do these, I like that there's a little bit of proactive, movement to see how this is going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, all these people that want the DeWitts to sell have to realize that the DeWitts are, I don't know, definitely top half, probably top 10 in ownership in baseball, I think, because yes, they want to make their money. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I also think that they care about winning. They care about the history of the game. They care about what the Cardinals mean to the city and all that kind of stuff that you don't get everywhere else. And I mean, they're cautious with things. I mean, look, we've seen what happened when Steve Cohen bought the Mets. A lot of money, a lot of splashy around, nothing's come out of it, right? And at some point in time, that bill's probably going to come due.
Yeah.
And So,
who, by the way, just fired their manager.
oh, did they?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's that they thought they were going to do that about a month or so ago. So I guess
Yeah.
that's not too surprising. But yeah, it's just I think you could do a whole lot worse than the DeWitts. Are they perfect? No. And then there's been times where they should have probably done more than they did. But I don't think it's in a greedy aspect. I think it's in a this is how we want to win baseball, or this is how we think baseball should be.
Yeah.
And you know, you can call it, say it's naive or whatever the case may be, but I think they've shown enough that they are they want a winning team in St. Louis, and I don't think you say that about every other ownership.
Yeah, that's true. And there was, I can't remember one of the labor strifes, I guess you should say. And I remember Rosenthal and somebody else making the comment that the loudest voice in the room is the DeWitts.
Yeah,
saying that they are very substantial and swing a big stick in as far as ownership versus labor disagreements. I'm a labor guy, that. I'm a union dude, but that says a lot about a team that is willing to go to bat and keep up with tradition and do the things. I mean, we all have frustrations with how it's worked out, but hey, there's a lot of organizations that are jealous of where the Cardinals are right now.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, if you want to put black marks on Bill DeWitt Jr.'s record, he was one of the main people that got Rob Manfred as commissioner.
Yes,
which is not necessarily, but also it's hard for me to believe that anybody would have done differently, right? I mean, anybody besides Manfred. I think that you'd had the idea of a independent commissioner that is going to do what's best for the game is gone a long, long time ago.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Because the owners are the ones that pay that salary. If you want to get an independent one, you get owners that pay half the salary and the players pay half the salary, and then maybe you've got something. But that's not the way this works. Commissioner is basically, especially since Bud Selig, Selig and Manfred have taken it to the extreme of being front men for the ownership. So I don't know that life would have been a whole lot different over the last X amount of years if somebody else besides Rob Manfred had that position.
Agreed. And I mean, if it tells you anything, now I also understand he had his own personal issues is why they made the change, but I think that it's pretty telling that the union is now represented by someone more attuned to the law.
Yeah.
Like a Manfred being an attorney type situation that I hope says more about this isn't as much independent as it is follow the rule of the law, and we're going to battle it out that way. And that's why the union had to do their leader the same way.
Well, and then you've followed this as long as I have. I never understood why Tony Clark had ownership or leadership of that group, because we're of the era. We remember Marvin Miller and we remember Don Fair and these lawyers that were, getting the players, obviously they had a counsel that advised them or whatever, but they had somebody that was steeped in this kind of stuff and knew the ins and outs. And I'm sure Tony Clark was okay at that, although it didn't feel necessarily, I feel like the agreement that he negotiated last time really has kind of been criticized as very pro owner and not pro player. And obviously he had, Bruce Meyer, who's now the lead, was his lawyer there too, but it just never made a whole lot of sense for him to be the face of that organization. And I think they're better served the way they are now. We'll see. And it may mean that we're not going to have a 2027 now too. We'll see. But I think that they're in much better shape, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so I agree, and I'm still cautiously optimistic something can happen, as far as agreement, just because the game's at a high point. But it's been this way before, and things have fallen apart, and I don't think it's going to matter who's running either one of the organizations.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, like we've seen a number of people. I think Jeff Jones put it out in his Word About Birds thing today. Basically, you just have to ignore everything that's out there now because
100%. Yes.
you know, wild, pie in the sky type things.
Yes.
I think it tells you a little bit about, their mentality, but we get caught up a lot in the oh, this is terrible, this is a bad idea right here, all this, and that's fair. One, because it gives us something to talk about, but two, you got to realize that a lot of this stuff is thrown in there so they can negotiate it away. So I don't know. Hopefully they can find some common ground and we don't miss much. But nothing. Don't pay any attention till January probably. Nothing before January is going to be all that serious.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Couldn't have said it better. That's it's somewhat surprising that we get so much pushback on some of the things that go out now, because I think there may be an element of let's just push this out to see what the response is. If it's positive in our direction, we'll push forward. If it's negative, we'll act like it never happened.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that as well. So trying to win the battle of public opinion a little bit. So
yes.
All right, Cardinals have Miami this weekend. That should be it could be a tough series, and then a game off before hitting the Braves and that kind of run. So we will be back at you next week to talk about how things look and get ready for I guess by this time next week it'll be a weekend, 4th of July weekend at Wrigley Field. That's going to be an interesting one. But until then, for Alan, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Good night.
Is hit 4 home runs this postseason. He's swinging for number 5 right there, and it's a full count.
The Rangers a strike away from winning it in both the 9th and 10th innings. 2 strikes on Freese, 2 strikes on Berkman.
Hits it in the air to center.